Okay, settling in to tell you about this crazy few months. You seriously won't believe what's been going on with my family. It's been a total roller coaster, full of stuff that makes you scratch your head and wonder how people can even act like this. So, you know my older brother Marcus? Yeah, the one my parents always put on a pedestal. Seriously, their golden child. It wasn't even subtle. They practically wore t-shirts proclaiming how much better he was than me, especially when it came to school. Every report card, every achievement Marcus had was just another chance for them to tell me I needed to buckle up and try to be more like him. He breezed through school, got into a top-tier university across the country, and then landed this fancy corporate job right out of graduation. He was making good money from the start, but then about 5 years ago he hit the jackpot, became one of the youngest senior executives at his huge company. Man, did I hear about it. Non-stop. My parents acted like he'd cured a disease or something. His corporate gig became the standard, the thing I was supposed to aspire to, the benchmark I was failing to meet. But honestly, the whole corporate ladder thing, it just wasn't for me. I wasn't interested in the 9-to-5 grind, even if it paid well. My dream ever since I was a kid and learned what the word meant was to be an entrepreneur, to build something myself. I'd been working in the automotive industry for a few years, soaking up everything I could, getting a feel for the market. I had this idea for cool, unique car accessories, stuff I'd designed myself. I did my homework, sketched out a business plan, everything. It felt solid. I was finally ready to take the leap, but first, I thought I should tell my parents. I mean, despite all the Marcus worship, they were still my parents, right? I figured they'd want to support me or at least hear me out. So a couple of days after they threw Marcus this massive party, celebrating his executive promotion, I sat them down. I laid out my plan, all excited. I expected questions, maybe some cautious advice instead. They just laughed, like I'd told a terrible joke. They said I was pranking them, that it was embarrassing, that after all the money they spent on my education, this was my big idea. I tried to tell them I was serious, that I had a real plan, but they just shook their heads. They strongly advised me not to quit my job. They said they'd be too embarrassed to introduce their son as a failure, because they just knew my business was doomed from the start. Apparently, I just wasn't capable enough, and compared to Marcus, they couldn't bear the thought of me failing that badly. So just stick to the job I had, they said. I was flawed, and honestly really hurt. I pushed back, told them I was doing this with or without their support. That's when things got really ugly. They said I was free to do what I wanted, but I wasn't free from the consequences. They flat out told me that if I went ahead with this business idea, they would cut me out of their lives, because in their words, I would be an embarrassment. They even said they were tired of having one son, Marcus, the successful executive, and the other, me, at 25, still trying to figure his life out. They claimed they'd been thinking about this conversation for a while anyway, so it was an ultimatum. Either stay in a regular job and not embarrass them, or pursue my dream, make a fool of myself and lose them. It wasn't a hard choice, not really. The way they said it, the complete lack of faith, the coldness. I chose my dream. I walked away and didn't speak to them again. And yeah, I didn't speak to Marcus either. I figured he'd take their side, which was fine. We weren't close anyway, always that golden child, other child dynamic. Honestly, I thought he was pretty arrogant back then, so I wasn't too bothered about losing contact with him either. I had this fire in my belly, fueled by wanting to prove them wrong. I knew cars, I knew the industry, and I really believed people wanted the kind of products I planned to make. So I quit my job. It was a massive gamble, maybe not the smartest move looking back, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone without a solid plan B. But for me, it worked. Those first few months were brutal. I was scraping by, living super lean, relying just on word of mouth. But slowly, so slowly, people started hearing about my business. Customers started coming in. After about 18 months, things really started to pick up speed. And then there was no looking back. Now 5 years later, I'm comfortable. I'm not a billionaire, not even close. But I own my apartment in a nice part of town, drive a good car, and my business is thriving. It's everything I hoped it would be, and yeah, it feels pretty good proving them wrong. So good, in fact, that I haven't felt the need to rub it in their faces. It just wasn't worth the energy. 5 years of total silence. I even got married to Sarah, my girlfriend of 8 years. We've been married for 2 years now, and just last month we found out she's pregnant. So many huge life moments, and not a peep from my parents. I knew they knew about my life, though. I've kept in touch with cousins and aunts and uncles, and they'd tell me my parents would ask about me pretty often, but they never reached out directly. Guess that was their way of dealing with it. Then last week, out of the blue, I got a message from them, asked if I'd be willing to meet. Sarah encouraged me to go, just to see what it was about. They didn't give any details in the message. So I went back to their house for the first time in 5 years. They were weirdly nice, warmer than I remembered them ever being, even when I lived there. Small talk felt forced. I knew they were building up to something. Finally, they got to it. They said they'd heard how well my business was doing and wanted to congratulate me. No apology for the past or cutting me off or anything. Just, glad you proved us wrong. Our skepticism is gone. Okay, awkward, but progress. I just smiled, not sure what to say. Then they pivoted to Marcus, said he'd had a run of bad luck. His company hadn't been doing well, and there were big layoffs even in upper management. Marcus was included. He'd been out of a job for about 4 months, just sitting at home. They said he was having a tough time, really depressed, finding it hard to even apply for jobs, because after being at the same place for so long, he didn't know where to start. And the offers he was getting were way below what he used to earn. I was confused. Why were they telling me this? What could I do? I just listened, waiting for the other shoe to drop, and drop it did. They finally got to the point. Would I be willing to hire Marcus, give him a position in my company? Something well-paying where he could use his executive experience? I didn't know what to say. My mind just went blank. I mumbled something about needing time to think and promised to let them know. I absolutely did not say yes. Honestly, I should have seen it coming. They hadn't contacted me for 5 years when I was struggling or building the business. They only reached out when they needed something, or rather when Marcus did. They seemed pretty pleased with themselves. I think they expected me to jump at the chance to be the big brother savior. But going home and talking it over with Sarah, it just didn't feel right. Sarah works in finance, not my industry, but she gets business. She said it was my company, my professional life, and I had to do what was best for it. If I didn't think working with Marcus would work, then that was that. She also pointed out how convenient their sudden interest in me was, happening right when Marcus needed help. She didn't think their attempt to reconcile was genuine at all, and she was right. I didn't owe them or him a job, especially after how they'd treated me. I didn't plan on telling them no directly. I thought I'd just let it fade, avoid the drama, but they wouldn't let it go, texting me every single day asking for my answer. I ignored them. Then they started calling. Finally, 2 days ago, they cornered me on the phone, demanding a decision. So I told them. I said I'd thought about it carefully, but I couldn't work with Marcus. We'd never had a good relationship, and I didn't believe we'd be able to work well together professionally. I didn't feel I owed it to him or them to hire him. Oh my God, they completely lost it. Screaming down the phone, everything they'd done for me, raising me, paying for things as a kid. And now when they finally needed me to return the favor, I was turning my back, pretending I didn't owe them anything. I was so taken aback. What favor? They did what parents are supposed to do, and that wasn't even the point. I tried to explain again that it was about professional compatibility, that Marcus and I just wouldn't be a good fit in the business, but they wouldn't listen. They just kept screaming, saying I shouldn't be acting like this just because of this, just because of this. They hadn't spoken to me in 5 years after telling me I was an embarrassment and cutting me off. They hadn't invested a single penny in my business. What right did they have to demand anything now? They doubled down, saying they'd only contacted me because they thought 5 years was long enough, and now that I was successful, I would have let it go. Instead, I was being petty, holding on to past grudges, and refusing to help my own family. They hammered on about Marcus being my brother and how I needed to be there for him now that he was in trouble. He would have done the same for you, they claimed. We would have supported you if your business failed, so you owe us the same. It was insane. The argument just spiraled, got so heated. After a while, I couldn't take it anymore. I told them I was done talking, that I didn't want to speak to them anymore, and I hung up. Then I blocked their numbers. Since then, I've been wrestling with my feelings. What they said about how they would have helped me if I was in Marcus's position, it got to me a little. Sarah keeps telling me it's pure manipulation, that they only say that because I wasn't in his place, and they haven't even apologized for anything they did. She reminds me of how Marcus treated me growing up, how everyone picked on me and he never stood up for me. And she's right, I know she is. But still, there's this weird nagging guilt. Like, maybe I am being petty. It just feels really strange anyway. That's where it stood after I blocked them. Hey, thanks for listening. It's been a little while since that blow-up call, and yeah, I know. Refusing to hire Marcus isn't the end of the world for him. It's just about me not wanting to work with him. Sarah and I are sticking to the decision, but man, my parents are not taking it well. They've gone into full-on smear campaign mode with the rest of our relatives, texting everyone we know, making it sound like I'm just jealous of Marcus and always have been, and this is me getting revenge or something. It's ridiculous. They're not just bringing it up if a relative calls them. They're actively reaching out, texting people just to spread this story about me. It's a total plea for attention, trying to make me look like the bad guy, but I'm not biting. They're blocked and they're staying blocked. Some relatives have actually reached out to me, sending screenshots of what my parents are saying. I've explained my side of the story, the whole thing. Most of our family already knew things were rough between us. My parents and I would run into each other at family events over the past 5 years and totally ignore each other, so it wasn't a secret. But dragging everyone into it like this, trying to turn them against me, that's a new low. Thankfully, after I explained, most of my relatives were really supportive. They said not to worry about my parents, that they know the history and see that my parents are just overreacting. That felt really good, honestly. And right now I've got bigger things to think about anyway. Sarah's pregnant. We were planning to announce it in a couple of weeks, but honestly, I'm tempted to do it sooner. Maybe it'll give my parents a hint to back off. Not sure it'll work though. Knowing them, they're pretty heartless. They might even try to cause trouble despite knowing we're expecting. Wouldn't put it past them. Okay, quick update. Sarah and I announced the pregnancy on social media a few days ago. It's been about 10 days since I last talked to my parents on that screaming call. Most of the family sent lovely messages congratulating us. Then I got this email from a random address. It said that my child was going to suffer because of what I was doing to my family. I instantly knew it was them. Had to be. Who else would say something so vile? Wishing ill on our baby, who isn't even born yet, just because I wouldn't give Marcus a job? It's sickening. And like I said before, Marcus didn't even ask me directly. This was all my parents pushing their agenda. Even if I had done something truly awful, nobody deserves that kind of message. I didn't show Sarah the email. No point in upsetting her, especially in the early stages of pregnancy. I decided I had to deal with it myself. I couldn't unblock them, So I drove over to their house. They wouldn't open the door. I guess they knew what they'd done was messed up. So I stood outside and just lost it. I yelled about the email, about how they had no right to say things like that. Not after how they treated me my whole life, not after cutting me off for 5 years. I yelled that they only cared now because I was successful, and they wanted a piece of it. Wanted to share my success with Marcus when they were never there for me when I was struggling. They didn't deserve to even speak to me. I told them whatever game they were playing, it wasn't working. It was just pushing me further away. I meant every word. I never wanted to speak to them again. I told them that even if they somehow decided to apologize in the future, I wouldn't forgive them. They could kiss goodbye to any help from me when they got older and retired, and they would never see their grandchild. After I finished, I just left. Drove home, and honestly, I felt this massive wave of relief, like a huge weight lifted. I'd been holding all that anger and hurt inside for so long, especially since they started bothering me again. It was time to just let it all out and cut ties completely. I still haven't told Sarah about this latest confrontation. Don't want to stress her out. I think I'll keep it to myself until after the baby's born. Hey, so after my little yelling match outside their house last week, my parents actually went quiet for a bit, laid low. We even had a small pregnancy announcement gathering at my place for some close family and friends, and I half expected them to try something, but they didn't show up, didn't cause a scene. I actually started to hope maybe they'd finally backed off. Then this morning, out of nowhere, I got a call from Marcus while I was at work. That was really weird. He hadn't spoken to me in 5 years, just like my parents. My first thought was dread. Was he calling to demand a job too? Was I going to have to go through all that drama again? I ignored the first call, but he called a few more times and then sent a text saying it was urgent and he needed to talk, but not to worry. He wasn't asking me for anything. He said something had been bothering him. Okay, that got my attention. So I called him back. We talked for a while. He explained he'd been pretty down in the dumps the last few weeks since losing his job and hadn't been talking to many people, ignoring messages from relatives and stuff. It was only in the last couple of days that he'd finally looked at his phone properly and realized everyone was talking about how unfair it was that our parents were demanding I give him a job at my company, especially considering how they'd treated me. Marcus was totally confused. He'd been talking to our parents constantly since he lost his job, confiding in them about how upset he was, but they hadn't said a word to him about trying to get me involved. He asked them about the messages from relatives, and they completely denied everything. Said they didn't know what people were talking about, but Marcus felt like they were lying. So, he called me to get the truth. He said he'd never once told our parents he wanted my help, and he couldn't figure out why they'd gone behind his back and tried to strong-arm me into hiring him when he hadn't even asked. After thinking about it for a second, I decided to tell him everything. He deserved to know what our parents had been up to. I told him exactly what they said to me, how they painted this picture of him being lost and depressed with no options, and then demanded I hire him to help the family. I told him I thought maybe they started out genuinely trying to help him, but it quickly devolved into just harassing me, which I wasn't okay with. I also told him I was truly sorry he lost his job. I knew how much that corporate career meant to him and how hard he'd worked. Being laid off like that must have been awful. But I was honest with him. He knew we never got along and we wouldn't work well together professionally, which was why I said no to our parents. And here's the surprising part. Marcus seemed to understand. He said he wasn't interested in working with me anyway. Not in a mean way, he just meant he wasn't in the right headspace to work for anyone right now. He was intentionally taking a break. Turns out, our parents made it sound like he had no job offers worth considering, but he actually did. He was just holding out, choosing to take some time off, which was his personal decision. He was upset about losing his job, but his break wasn't because of that. It was a choice he'd made. He vented to me a bit about how frustrated he was with our parents, how they made him look desperate, like he'd been whining to them and trying to get them to force me to give him a job when he hadn't done anything of the sort. He felt like they'd completely misrepresented him. After we talked it all through, he said he was going to confront our parents about this, and then something I honestly didn't expect. He apologized to me for everything I'd gone through, especially with our parents, but also, I think, for how he'd treated me in the past. It felt mature, like he'd actually grown up a lot in these last 5 years. Maybe the job loss gave him some perspective, showed him that nothing's permanent and maybe being arrogant isn't the way to go. We didn't suddenly become best friends, but we had a real, honest conversation, and I think that's enough for now. Okay, last part of this saga, at least for now. So after Marcus and I talked, he said he was going to talk to our parents about what they'd done. And he did. And it did not go well. Naturally, my parents got super defensive. They claimed they were just trying to help him out, that they didn't think his idea of taking time off was a good one, and he needed to get back into job hunting immediately. It blew up into a huge fight. Marcus accused them of trying to control his life forever, never letting him make his own decisions, even as an adult. Of course, my parents didn't like that one bit, and immediately started listing everything they'd done for him. All the normal parenting stuff that they somehow twist into grand favors. I still don't get why they do that. It's not a favor, it's parenting. Anyway, the fight got really bad. Now Marcus isn't speaking to them either, and guess who they're blaming for that? Yep, me. Again. How do I always become the scapegoat for every single problem they have? This time they didn't call or text me directly. They took to Facebook, made a post publicly blaming me for driving a wedge between them and Marcus. But here's where it actually got kind of amazing. Remember how I said our relatives sided with me after I explained things? Well, they saw the Facebook post and immediately piled on. Not on me, but on my parents. They called them out big time, saying they'd been terrible parents, not just to me, but also to Marcus, by constantly trying to control him and putting him under pressure, especially when he was already dealing with losing his job. They should have been supportive, the relatives said, not making him look bad and trying to manipulate the situation. My parents got absolutely hammered in the comments. After getting called out by pretty much everyone in the family, they deleted the post. And then they blocked pretty much everyone from the family too, so yeah. To sum it up, my parents have pretty much ostracized themselves from the whole family, all because they couldn't handle me saying no and then Marcus finding out what they did. Marcus and I? Well, he apologized for the past, and we're going to try and build some kind of relationship going forward. It's not fixed overnight, but it's a start. But right now, the most important thing is Sarah and the baby. I'm just really excited about becoming a dad. All this other family drama, it's still there, but it feels distant now. My main focus is on the future, and it's a good one. Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more deep and meaningful stories.